this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor.
Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Tolliver is off this week. And this week, if you've been following the news about Congress rescinding funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, you know it has been a tough week for those of us in public radio. We don't get any money directly from the CPB here at The Middle, but all of our public radio stations do. And if they are hurting, we are hurting. So I just want to thank you if you have made a donation to your public radio station or to us here at The Middle through listentothemiddle.com. It means a lot. We appreciate it. And it's very helpful for our system right now. So both Tolliver and I are part of the millennial generation. We grew up before there was social media. I got my Facebook account just as it was starting during my senior year in college. But today's younger generation has grown up with TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram and YouTube. And according to the Pew Research Center, almost half of Americans aged 13 to 17 say they're online almost constantly. I think most Americans would say they spend too much time doom scrolling on social media. But when we're talking about kids and teenagers, the stakes can be a lot higher. There are significant mental health impacts that can occur with heavy usage, and children can be exposed to dangerous trends, sensitive content, or even interaction with online predators. So that's our question this hour. How dangerous is social media for kids and teenagers? Our number is 844-4MIDDLE. That is 844-464-3353. And we're going to get to your calls in a moment. But first, last week on the show, we talked about America's standing in the world and whether or not you're worried about it. We got some very impassioned voicemails that came in after the show, like this one.
I'm Moises Bucay. I'm calling from San Antonio, Texas. I'm originally from Mexico, and I'm a naturalized citizen. I believe in what this country represents, and I came here because the respect of law and order and the balance of power and the opportunity to grow has always been the appeal of this country. This country is losing its footing. Countries are losing respect. And more important, people are starting to ignore the United States. They're looking away from it and will become an irrelevant country if we don't find our way again.
Well, thanks to everyone who called in. You can hear that entire episode on our podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. So now to our question this hour. How dangerous is social media for kids and teens? Our number again is 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can write to us at listentothemiddle.com. You can also comment on our live stream on YouTube. And by the way, if you're a teenager and you want to tell us your thoughts about this, please give us a call at 844-464-3353. And a warning, we may be discussing some difficult topics, so I want to let you know that ahead of time. Joining me this hour, Julie Scelfo, founder and executive director of Mothers Against Media Addiction. Julie, welcome to The Middle.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. And Matthew O'Neill, Matt O'Neill, a filmmaker and co-director of the documentary Can't Look Away, The Case Against Social Media, which is available to stream right now on Jolt. Matt, welcome to you.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get to the phones, let's talk about what we know in terms of the dangers. And I mentioned a few of the things we've been hearing about. But Matt, we talked about the 13-year-old age limit for social media, which there are many ways around. But your film looks at the dangers for users who are over 13 as well. Some pretty tragic incidents that have happened.
You know, I think that when Perry Peltz and I started making this film, like many adults, we had a vague sense that social media was bad, heard of online bullying, media addiction, but we had no idea the extent of bad actors on the platforms, of the access that predators, that sextortionists had to teenagers, and frankly, the content that promoted suicide and drug use that was being put into children's feeds day in and day out.
And you talk about suicide and drug use. In some cases, the kids can buy drugs that may be laced with fentanyl online on Snapchat and platforms like that. And there was a case in your film of a young person who ended up taking his own life after being basically, sextorted by somebody that he was talking with online.
In less than 6 hours. You know, Jordan Dumais was the captain of the football team, homecoming king, an incredible young man. And he came home, dropped off his girlfriend one night, and was instant messaged by what appeared to be a young woman. She flirts with him. She solicits an explicit photograph from him. And when he sends it, she immediately turns around and begins demanding money, money that he doesn't have. He gives her $300. They demand $1,000. He has no idea that this isn't a girl 2 towns over. It's actually sextortionists, professional sextortionists in another country. And when he says, I don't have any money. If you do this, I will kill myself. She says, do it. And he does. Right. And this is happening in where we all think our children are safe, in their bedrooms. The truth is that if that's the dangerous street corner now, is the open iPhone, the open tablet in your child's bedroom.
And by the way, just because we are talking about the issue of suicide, Matt, if anybody is having any of those thoughts and wants to make the call to people who can help, the number I believe is 988.
988 is the National Suicide Hotline. We all know 911, but 988 is something good to have in our minds.
Great. Julie, what are the main concerns that you have about social media use by kids and teenagers, and how are they different from the concerns that we all have about social media use and addiction?
Well, you know, I'm a mom of 3 kids, and when my oldest son was born, there were no iPhones, and Mark Zuckerberg worked at a small company called the Facebook. And so just like every other parent out there, as these technologies became available, I was trying to figure out what's right for my sons. I have 3 boys. What's safe, what's appropriate. And by the time my second son was in pre-K, every single person in my neighborhood had a phone. We were photographing our children constantly, sharing photos of those kids. And what we didn't think about was that we were actually training our kids that every single moment of your life should be photographed and shared. And now my youngest son, and again, he's only 5 years younger than my oldest, but he's growing up in the world of TikTok. And even though I don't allow him to have TikToks because I'm worried about what they do to his attention span, I can't stop him now from seeing TikToks because his friends send it to him. Instagram has gone to shorter and shorter reels. YouTube has gone to shorter and shorter reels. And so in this space of a very short amount of time, the entire media environment has changed, and our kids are being exposed to a volume of content and a style of content that is really kind of fracking their ability to concentrate and their ability to acquire the basic skills that you need to be socially and emotionally and also academically healthy.
And who has the ability to do something about that? Is it the teens or the children themselves, the parents, the companies, the government?
So there is responsibility all around. However, I don't think the responsibility belongs with the children. We do not give our kids access to alcohol and say, well, just don't drink too much, or, go to the casino, but make sure you leave in 30 minutes. No, as a society of reasonable adults, we have decided that there are certain substances, there are certain activities that are not appropriate for young people whose brains are not fully formed. And that's why we age gate gambling. That's why we age gate tobacco, alcohol, all those things. So there is a role for parents to play, and parents need to be more educated about what's going on. But the reason I started MAMA, Mothers Against Media Addiction, was because I began seeing the increase in suicide behavior and suicidality in children more than a decade ago. I began seeing the role of social media in promoting these unhealthy behaviors. And again, suicide's just at the far end of the spectrum. In between healthy child and wanting to die, you have an increase in people with eating disorders, body dysmorphia, cutting, bullying, all of these problems. But the real change needs to happen at the product level. And unfortunately, we've seen that these companies are not willing to fix the products themselves. And so that's why lawmakers need to act.
Well, and Matt, one of the big parts of that is the algorithm that, as a user, we don't really think much about or do have much to do with, but it has a lot to do with what we see and what's being fed to us. How are the algorithms making the problem worse, especially for young people who may have mental health issues already?
Well, we titled the film Can't Look Away, because really what the algorithms do is not feed you what you're looking for or what you want. They feed you what you can't look away from. One of the most tragic cases featured in the film is that of Mason Edens, a boy in Arkansas who died by suicide. But the way that started was that he had a bad breakup with a girlfriend, like lots of kids do. And he went on to TikTok looking for inspirational videos. But the algorithm doesn't respond to what you're looking for. The algorithm responds.
This podcast is supported by the original organic bedding and bath brand, Koyuchi.
Koyuchi has spent 35 years pioneering quality organic textiles, long before the word organic became, trendy. But words matter to Koyuchi. Words like craftsmanship, longevity, and wellness. So what does the word wellness mean to Koyuchi? It means that all of our products are absolutely free from harsh chemicals and dangerous toxins that can seep into your skin. It means effortless style that looks as good as it feels with naturally breathable, pre-washed organic cotton. And what does all of that mean to you? Well, it means that you can sleep well in Koyuchi's crisp, cool, luxuriously soft sheets that are ethically made and made with you in mind. Live well, sleep well with Koyuchi. And now during our Memorial Day sale event, you can enjoy 20% off organic cotton sheets, towels, and everything else at Koyuchi.com. That's Koyuchi.com for 20% off from now until May 25th. Koyuchi.com.
To what you linger on. So what does a sad, broken-hearted teenage boy linger on? Sad content. Within 3 weeks, he was being fed content that literally encouraged suicide, including the line, blow your head off.
Julie,
and
does
that
that surprise
video,
you?
which is in the film, is really hard to watch. And I just want to take a second to say how grateful I am to Matt and his partner Perry Peltz, because that film encapsulates in an hour and a half what every single parent in America needs to understand is being shown to our children. They're being shown what you can't look away from, and for that reason, it's addictive. And we, as a whole society, are addicted to these things. I'm addicted too. I'm not pointing any fingers here. It's affecting me too. But we have to act to keep our kids safe.
Well, and speaking of acting, one of the apps we're talking about here is TikTok, which Congress voted last year to ban nationwide unless it was sold by its Chinese parent company. And the TikTok CEO, Shou Chew, testified on Capitol Hill in 2023, and he got an earful from lawmakers. Listen to this interaction with Georgia Republican Representative Buddy Carter.
Why is it that TikTok consistently fails to identify and moderate these kinds of harmful videos. Why is it? Why is it that you allow this to go on? We've already heard, God bless you, from parents who are here with us, who have lost children. I submit to you, everybody up here cares about the children of this country. Tell me why.
This is a real industry challenge, and we're working
No, it's
very
not
hard.
industry. This is TikTok.
We're
talking about TikTok. We're talking about why is it that you can't control this?
And by the way, President Trump has ordered a delay of the ban on TikTok multiple times, which is why it is still operating in the United States despite the ban being passed by Congress and upheld by the Supreme Court. We're taking your calls coming up on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Julia Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife.
Boom, boom. This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. And this hour, we're asking you, how dangerous is social media for kids and teenagers? The number to call is 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on social media. I'm sorry, we're asking people to go to social media while we're talking about the dangers of it, but this is the world we live in right now. I'm joined by Mothers Against Media Addiction founder Julie Scelfo and Matt O'Neill, co-director of the new film Can't Look Away, the case against social media. Let's get to Jason, who's in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Jason, what do you think about the dangers of social media for kids and teens?
Oh, it's a huge growing problem, and I was a teacher back in 2015 when I resigned prior to that for 10 years, and saw this becoming a growing trend then. And less platforms were becoming more popular at the time. And we were trying to figure out a way how to control this in the schools at that time. And it became a pushback from parents and kids themselves to where we've even had to allow phones be available to them during the school hours, where when I was going through school, that was unheard of because the technology wasn't there. I look at it as a tool, and how do we use this tool to our advantage? And many times it's being to our disadvantage because we don't know how to properly use this tool. And that's been a huge concern for many people. It doesn't matter whether they're teens or adults. I see many adults just as addicted as teens are.
Well, and I wonder, Jason, when it comes to the pressure to keep the phones in the schools, which is a part of this conversation, do you think that it came more from the kids or from the parents who want to be able to reach them?
Initially, it was from the kids, and then it became more from the parents who wanted to reach them. And as the unfortunate situations of school shootings and stuff like that, there was that immediate access of wanting to make sure their kid was safe. And that was that assurance. If they're able to answer the phone, then they must be safe. But that can also be an unsafe situation because now the phone's ringing and the person is wondering where that's coming from.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that call. Julie, what do you think about that? It's interesting to hear about the sort of dilemma that people have between wanting to use a phone for safety and also the dangers of using the apps on that phone as a kid or as a teenager.
I'm so glad Jason called in because that concern that he had as a teacher is actually one of the reasons I started Mama, because over and over and over again, we are hearing from teachers and principals about how the presence of smartphones at school is disrupting education. It is causing all kinds of distractions. We hear not only from teachers, but from social workers that they go into classrooms and can see children openly watching Netflix, playing video games, gambling, and even worse, sometimes sharing pornographic images. And now with AI, you can even create a deep fake. And there was a situation in Pennsylvania where students in a class took a photograph of teachers, ran it through an AI program and notified the teachers, which led the teachers to resign. I mean, how can they be expected to work in that environment? So we do a lot of parent education because one of the core parts of our mission is getting smartphones away for the day at school. And that means that students will have the opportunity to have 7 solid hours to be present and learn real in-person relationships with their teachers, real in-person socializing with their peers, because we know those are so critical to being emotionally healthy. And we also know from many studies that even the mere presence of a smartphone, even if you're not looking at it, leads to distraction and lower reading and math scores. So right now, unfortunately, we are seeing the lowest performance of reading and math by our 13-year-olds since we started measuring back in 1971. So I think if we want to get our students back on track, we know we have to get these phones out of the class and let teachers do their jobs.
And a lot of states that are led by both Republicans and Democrats are starting to do that, which is interesting. Let's go to Justice, who's in Baltimore, Maryland. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hi. I have a lot of thoughts. I suppose as in preamble, I am 22. I am a non-binary, and I'm non-binary, and I grew up on the internet. It's a double-edged sword in a sense because the internet allowed me easy access to the information to allow myself to find who I really was. But by the same token, that easier access to that sense of community also led to just me talking to a lot of people I really shouldn't have been talking to that took advantage of me and a lot of my friends. One story that really, really sticks out to me was that one of my now closest friends was encouraged to lie about their age to say that they were 4 years older than they currently were when they were like 9 and 10. And that's horrifying just to like meet the expectation of adults or the other people in that sort of community.
So, Justice, when you hear us talking about this and the dangers of social media for kids and teenagers, what do you think about that? Because it sounds like you're saying there have been some pros and some cons for you. Is there some solution that you would say this is what we ought to be doing to make it better in all kinds of ways?
I don't have a slam dunk solution. My mind immediately jumps to it would be great if there was some level of supervision, but with that also comes like a possibility for really controlling parents to control what their kids see, which again could be used to limit access to figuring out who you really are, to try and fit into a sort of mold. And it's a catch-22, I suppose. I'm not sure what else, honestly. I know a lot of people are trying to propose like ID verification, and there are some privacy concerns with that, but I'm not too knowledgeable on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it. Matt, I'm glad that we got that call for a number of reasons, but one of them is there are benefits to social media, and I don't want to, have people think, oh, we're just attacking social media. We use it. A lot of people get a lot out of it, but it does have dangers as well.
Jeremy, I think we promoted our appearance on The Middle on social media because social media can be a good thing. It breaks my heart to hear about Justice's bad experiences and bad experiences of their friends, but it is also a place to connect and to learn and to make important social connections. I think the point, big picture, is that there needs to be some sort of accountability. What the mechanism is that needs to be figured out. But right now, because of a law written in 1996, the Federal Communications Act of 1996, and one section called Section 230 that your listeners may have heard of, the social media companies essentially can't be sued. And I think that if someone at Instagram or someone at TikTok can figure out that I want a lawnmower before I know that I want to cut my grass, or that I want to think about getting hair implants, maybe you're getting the same ads that I do, Jeremy. They can also figure out how to protect our children from content that encourages suicide, right? Like there's a logic here that somehow the brightest minds that are being paid the biggest dollars can have the tools to keep children safe and still keep social media a place where people can connect and interact and make meaningful progress in their lives.
And that goes back to the algorithm.
It goes back to the algorithm. I was just going to say in 1996, when that law was written, we were using, if you had the internet, you used a 2800 baud modem to dial up.
Yes.
Which probably our 22-year-old listeners definitely are not aware of what that was like. Elizabeth is calling from northern Indiana. Elizabeth, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hi. As a teenager myself who spends a lot of time on social media, I truly, truly, truly believe that social media addiction is real and it should be treated as other addictions. I was thinking about this the other day and how there are rehabs for drug addicts and people who drink a lot of alcohol. I feel like there should be something available for teens, especially as like a social media rehab where they can go and interact in person without the worry of being on their phone or missing out on anything.
When did you start using social media, and do you think you're addicted to it right now, Elizabeth?
I do think I am aware of my addiction and I'm trying to fix it. I have screen time on my phone that I asked my parents to set up. I have friends that do spend a lot of time on their phone, and I don't think they realize it. But I started using social media when I was 13 or 14, and I'm 17 now, so that's 5 years, I think.
And let me just ask you one more thing. What do you think is the most dangerous thing to you about your use of social media? Is it just the amount of time that you're spending on it, or are there things that you come across that you think are actually dangerous to your health?
I think there's I'm just spending a lot of time away from family and friends and making meaningful connections in my own personal life that's not through a portable device. but I do see a lot of influencers like pushing, like especially with body image, especially for pushing like for girls, especially for like a skinny, like model off duty vibe, where you have to look good all the time. And I feel like that's very unrealistic.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, I really appreciate your call. Thank you so much for listening and for calling in. Julie, so many interesting points there. I told you we were going to get young callers. We always do, but it's so nice to hear from a 17-year-old. Yeah.
I mean, look, out of the mouth of babes, right? She's recognizing at such a young age that this is an addiction. At Mama, our website is wearemama.org. We have a series called the Expert Insight Series where I speak with different experts about different facets of this problem. And we had Dr. Jim Winston on, who is an addiction expert, and he explained that the way this works in the brain is exactly the same as the way any other type of addictive substance is in the brain. And so she's right. You go through withdrawals when you don't have access to it. And one study of young people that took them away from devices and sort of spent time in the woods away from screens found it took 4 or 5 days for young people to be able to go back to normal recognition of facial expressions and normal eye-to-eye human contact. And so, you asked her a great question, what she thought is the most dangerous part of social media. And I can't pick one part. I think the, examples Matt gave earlier about the extreme things like fentanyl sales or sextortion, that's incredibly harmful. But another incredibly harmful aspect of it is that social media blends everything. It's giving you photos of your friends at a birthday party, cat videos, and then you'll suddenly see a video in which someone's hit by a car, or suddenly there's a video of someone talking about a death. And so as a human being, it takes you on this emotional roller coaster that's so disturbing. And at least as an adult, I had, 25 years, however, more than that, of growing up without that kind of what they now call brain rot. But for young people, my own kids say, hey, this is normal. And guess what? It's not normal. It's not normal to be exposed to somebody dying or some horrible accident and then in the next second see a cat video. So that's harmful
Or these days, an AI-generated video of Judge Judy as a baby. That's showing up on mine for some reason. Let's check what's coming in online at listentothemiddle.com. King Sun in Los Angeles says, as someone who lived through his teens in the social media boom, I would argue that social media is harmful to people of all ages, not just kids and teens. I'm not saying that social media can't be a great learning tool for people, but I feel it's mostly used as a feed for people to compare themselves against others. And Shelby in Philadelphia says, social media is a commodity that is made purposely addictive for profit. Just as cigarette companies were found liable for making cigarettes addictive, social media companies should be liable. Let's get to another call from Larissa, who is in Aurora, Illinois. Larissa, go ahead with your thoughts.
I'm hearing everybody give such negative input on social media, and I have a teenager who's going to be 16 next week, and I have an 18-year-old. So as a parent, I'm right in the thick of it. And I am so grateful that they have had social media, particularly through the pandemic. They've been able to keep touch with their friends, which is so big for me. My daughter is neurodivergent and has a very difficult time making friends at school, but she has this incredibly strong network of friends because the kids have formed this group, and then they've moved away from each other and they're able to stay in contact, which is it's so important that we have people that we trust and have history with. And
do you have any concerns though about your kids' use of social media, Larissa?
Not really. I have a really good relationship with both of my children, and it's the same for everybody. If you're sitting on your phone or sitting on a tablet and doom scrolling, that's not healthy. I don't care what age you are. But if you're using it smartly, it is a tool. It's a tool to connect with people. It's why it's called social media. And
Yeah.
the fact that there's bad content on there, there's bad stuff in the grocery store. You need to be aware
Right.
of what you're consuming.
Larissa, thank you very much for that. Matt, what do you think about that? A parent who says social media has been pretty good for her kids.
I think that social media can be a positive force in children's lives. It comes back to a little bit of what we were talking about before, which is how do we emphasize the positive and eliminate the negative? And when I say the negative, I don't mean, again, this like vague sense of it's bad or distracting or even leads to bad educational outcomes. I'm talking about the negative that leads to death, addiction, and real life harms. So social media is not a binary, a simple on, off, good, bad. It's the same thing, like so many aspects of what we're wrestling with today with technology. There is, to steal the title of your show, Jeremy, there's a middle, right? And there's a middle ground that we have to meet at. And when I say we, I mean parents, the tech companies, legislators, like everyone has to come around about what's safe for children.
Yes, and we're going to get to that. And the fact that in the case of the issue we're talking about here, there actually is more bipartisan agreement on this than you would maybe expect. But we're not the only country that is dealing with these issues. And one country is trying to raise the legal age for using the platforms. Australia passed a ban last year for anyone under age 16. It's 13 here in the U.S. And it's supposed to go into effect later this year. Here's the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
We want them to have real experiences with real people because we know that social media is causing social harm. This is a scourge. We know that there is mental health consequences for what many of the young people have had to deal with. The bullying that can occur online, the access to material which causes social harm.
And one of the things they're trying to figure out in Australia is how best to do age verification. More of your calls coming up on The Middle.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world. The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy. With very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, right, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and this hour we're asking how dangerous social media is for kids and teenagers. You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out to us at listentothemiddle.com. I'm joined by filmmaker Matt O'Neill, co-director of the documentary Can't Look Away, The Case Against Social Media, and Mothers Against Media Addiction founder Julie Scelfo. And before we get back to the phones, we heard about what's happening in Australia. What do you think about raising the age, Julie, for using social media to 16? Is that feasible?
It's certainly feasible, and there are some experts who say they think it would be better to raise it to 18, including some people who work for these companies. You know, when you talk to folks who work for these tech companies, they're the ones who don't let their kids get phones at all. They're the ones who send their kids to Waldorf schools where there's no electronics because they understand the risks. The last mom who called in who talked about the benefits of social media for her kids said something I think was really important, which was that her child had made a group of friends and they used social media to stay in touch. So they had a pre-existing in-person relationship and then used social media to connect. I think that's a very different thing than when young people go online and meet people online who they've never actually met in person, because you can pretend to be somebody else on social media. And too often we're finding out that kids make friends with someone who turned out to be an adult or not who they say they are. So that's a way you can make sure it's safer.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Matt, we talked about the fact that there actually is some bipartisan agreement on Capitol Hill that social media is dangerous for young people. Do you think that the lawmakers there are going to have the backbone necessary to do anything about it? And I say that because we see that they're not stopping President Trump from delaying this TikTok ban, even though they all voted for it.
It's an incredible. The TikTok ban in particular, when you think about it, was voted into law by both chambers of Congress, bipartisan support, upheld in the Supreme Court, signed into law, and now the Justice Department is not enforcing it. But when we look at the Kids Online Safety Act, which is the major piece of legislation federally that is meant to protect children online, it passed the Senate last year with 93 votes. I mean, how many things passed the Senate, this divided Senate, with anywhere near that number of votes? And so I think we have to question where that backbone actually exists, because there is an enormous amount of lip service and rightfully incredible sympathy for the parents who are courageously out there fighting to bring more and more attention to what happened to their children so it doesn't happen to other children. But the job is not getting done. President Biden last year promised to sign KOSA into law. Speaker Mike Johnson did not bring it to the floor for a vote. KOSA is introduced again this year with bipartisan support in the Senate and in the House. It may not be a perfect law, but it is a law that is moving things in a right direction to try to protect our children. So it's a question, I think, that your audience, we all need to ask our representatives. Why can't this happen? If you think this is a good idea, if you think our kids need to be safe online, why isn't this moving forward?
Priscilla is calling us from Dallas, Texas. Hi, Priscilla. Welcome to The Middle. What do you think?
Hi, I just wanted to call in and weigh in my thoughts because I believe while there is an issue with self-harm on social media when it comes to children, there's also an issue of radicalization that I see in young boys specifically, and I feel as though it's equally as dangerous to allow children and on social media who are able to see these, very politicized, radical videos and posts.
What are you thinking of, Priscilla, when you talk about radicalizing young boys?
When I think about that, I think about a lot of some social media influencers, such as some recent examples, Andrew Tate. I did not expect so many young men, at least in my life, And when I say young men, I mean children that are between the ages of 10 to 14 that were, repeating a lot of the talking points that I would see in some of his videos. And it's something that even though I would be able to avoid myself on social media, I'm 23, but for them, I would be able to hear it once again in real life, in person, from them. They're repeating these same points. And it's getting to the point where it's like, sometimes I believe they don't understand fully what they're saying, and yet they're having all of these posts pushed into their timeline from the algorithm. And I think that's, a big problem that we also have when it comes to social media.
Yeah, Priscilla, thank you very much for that call. Julie, your thoughts on that?
If we took our children to see a G-rated movie in the movie theater, and before the movie start, there was a preview for an R or an X-rated film, no parent in America would tolerate that. And yet, if your child signs up for an account, indicate that they're 13 years old, the algorithm can still promote content to them that has no place in a child's world. And that's why these products have to be changed. It's so easy to forget that these products are made this way by design. There are human beings at these companies who are designing algorithms to, again, promote whatever you can't look away from. And what we can't look away from is whatever's most extreme, what's most violent, what's most prurient. We're human beings. We can't help but look at this stuff. And so unfortunately, the caller is exactly right. We are hearing over and over again about a rise in participation in hate groups, a rise in this kind of, toxic masculinity. My sons have come home and said things that my husband was shocked at and was like, where did you hear that? That's not a normal thing to say. Where did you get that idea? And usually after we unpack it and discuss it, we find out it's something that made its way through the world, through social media. So I think that's another real harm that we have to think about.
James is calling us from Fort Collins, Colorado. James, what do you think about the dangers of social media for kids and teenagers?
Hey there. I think what a point that might be being lost here, kind of getting mixed in the weeds, is that a greater issue here is the commercialization of our data. Surveillance capitalism preys on knowing everything about us, and that is often used against us simply because that's how capitalism works. That's how the market works. So our data is packaged and sold to the highest bidder, and oftentimes there's not any oversight or regulation in that. So, we can have a decent conversation, and there's space to talk about what kinds of content we want to restrict and how. But I think the greater underlying issue is the commercialization of data in general. Shoshana Zuboff, who's a professor emeritus at Harvard, wrote an excellent book on this called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Highly recommend it.
Interesting. And a great point, Matt. Just the amount of money involved here for these companies, which are making billions of dollars, and he's right, on our data. It's an uphill battle for trying to go against them. And you can hear the CEOs when they testify, this is an industry-wide problem. I don't really think there's much we can do about this. What do you think?
It's interesting when I hear what you're talking about with surveillance capitalism and the data. I hear part of the problem. I also hear part of the solution, because to go back to that analogy that one of the callers made earlier to the cigarettes, it took not just whistleblowers, not just legislation, not just hearings to change things. It took a change in culture. And in 1996, when I was 18 years old, almost 35% of teenagers had smoked in a year. And now it's down to something like 6%. That's not because they were told not to smoke. It's because they don't want to smoke anymore. And I think as young people begin to understand that they're not using a product, right? Something when they're not paying for these social media, they are the product, right? Their data is what is being used and what has value. And kids get hip to that. And children don't like being taken advantage of. They don't like being taken advantage of by big companies, especially. So part of what I think this caller is talking about is part of the education campaign that will change this culture, because young people are not going to participate in a system that isn't serving them when they have the appropriate sort of literacy in that space. And at some point, it won't be cool. Just like it's not cool for most kids to use Facebook. It's not going to be cool to use TikTok or Snapchat if they see this instead as an aspect of surveillance capitalism that's taking advantage of them and just using them.
Some more email comments coming in at listentothemiddle.com. Mike in Minneapolis says 16 should be the minimum age to be able to purchase a smartphone, just like gambling, just like alcohol, just like getting a tattoo or getting a piercing. There are age limits. And Mark in San Antonio says, can't say it enough. Where are the parents? Be involved with what your kids are doing. Let's check in here with Brady in Arlington Heights, Illinois. Brady, go ahead with your thoughts.
I'm listening to the show. I'm very, very tuned into this because I have a 7-year-old boy and a 3-year-old daughter, and I'm myself as a parent was born in the 70s, so I'm not from a generation of being so inundated and bombarded with so much devices and technology. Hearing on the show how there's justifying it and they're trying to find the balance and everybody's trying to find the good and the bad and the harm and the good and I just keep going back to the in my mind, in my development, in my upbringing.
I think we lost him there, but Julie, one thing he was clearly getting to there is that we're very different generations. As I said at the very beginning, I grew up in the sort of generation where we started with no social media and we ended our youth with social media. But how are parents to know what to do when they didn't actually have these products, at a young age themselves?
I mean, it's tough. And as a parent, I face those same questions. And I really appreciate Mark that emailed in and said, parents pay attention. And parents do need to pay attention. And I encourage parents, if your child has a device, if they have a phone, sit down next to them and see what they're looking at. Because your child can be right next to you and you think you know what they're doing, but you don't unless you're looking at it. At the same time, I, as a young mom, signed up all my kids for software that was supposed to let me know if it would alert me if they saw something dangerous. And I spent a week, I hooked up all their accounts, and I started getting 100 email alerts a day and 100 different emails saying your child has seen something violent, your child has seen alcohol, your child has heard profanity. And I realized there's no way any parent can do this on their own. And all of these apps, all of these products that say they're parent controls, they don't work. And you can set them all up and you think you're doing right by your child, but they don't always work. And that is why there have to be safeguards. We don't let people make baby formula and put wood chips in it just because they could make a little more profit. We have regulations in place that are standards for food, for our vehicles. You could make a cheaper car if you didn't put seatbelts in it, but we require the seatbelts. So for social media, I think Matt and I have the same view that these products need to be safeguarded. According to Meta, and this is Meta's data, you can look it up on their website. In September, they put out a press release touting all the things they're doing to remove suicide and self-harm content. And at the bottom of the press release, they acknowledged taking action on 12 million pieces of suicide and self-harm content last year from Facebook and Instagram. And that was just between April and June. So a modest estimate is there's 48 million separate pieces of content that's very unhealthy going around these platforms annually. And that doesn't even include the other kinds of unhealthy content.
Yeah. Let's get to Joshua in St. Louis. Hi, Joshua. Go ahead with your thoughts.
Hey, yeah. I had a comment on how earlier you mentioned with the companies, how they can, they'll know even before we think about it, something we need, yet they for some reason don't have the capabilities to protect our children. And one thing I remember reading was how it's like China with TikTok and everything over there, they have, of course, a lot of censorship on it, but a lot of it is positive content. Whereas you look at a lot of other places, you can find a lot of hateful content that, of course, leads to the clicks. And I remember growing up, back in 2007, 2008, when the first smartphone came out, I was growing up with the, with social media and kind of seeing how it evolved and everything like that. And I really do believe they they do have, to an extent, some protections on this content, but I still do see a lot of promotion for it. Like Reddit, for example, back in the day, they had a lot of really bad subreddits, of course, with gore and very not safe for work things, but, they quote unquote took care of it and banned them. But for years, there were hidden, what could be considered hidden subreddits still with these things like gore and all that. But they still had hundreds of thousands of people subscribed to them and following them and reporting them, of course. And it wasn't until about a month ago one of these were banned. Yet I've known about it for years and nothing's been taken care of about it. So it's like, how do you get to that far, yet you guys don't do anything about it when it's very obvious that it's there?
Well, and Joshua, it's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up because honestly, Matt, we could do an entire show on the idea that these companies highlight the things that make us the angriest, which is a big part of what we're talking about here.
Right. That's a whole different set of problems with social media, right? Is in terms of how they amplify the most extreme emotions, usually negative ones. What we see in the effect with children is this depressive content and this negative content that can transform them emotionally. But that's for the next show, Jeremy, because there's more than one problem with social media.
Well, and as we close out this hour, I'm just going to briefly ask each of you, let's try to end on a high note here. I'll start with you, Matt. After putting together your film, do you have hope that things are going to get better when it comes to how young people interact with social media?
100% yes, because I'm inspired by the parents you see in the film who lost their children, who are working to change policy or working to change the way these social media companies work. These parents, just 2 weeks ago with that big, beautiful bill, they fought day and night to make sure that an AI resolution that was going to take away the ability of states to regulate artificial intelligence was removed from that bill. And that was because of citizen-based activism, parents who are changing the world coming out of that tragedy. So positive change is possible. Take a stand and do something.
And Julie, what about you? Are you optimistic that people are taking this issue more seriously and things will change?
I am optimistic because when I started Mama, I didn't know, whether it would work, whether people would want to join me. We're not even 2 years old yet, and we are already up to 35 chapters in 22 states. I'm optimistic because we see lawmakers all over the country, red and blue states, taking action. In Missouri, Nebraska, Arkansas, they've enacted phone-free school bans. Nebraska and Minnesota passed Kids Code legislation, which is legislation that will require social media companies to make their products safe for kids. And, a new Pew study that just came out said 74% of adults support banning phones in schools. So, I'm optimistic, but it is going to take a lot of work because these tech companies have a lot of money and they lobby hard to prevent any safeguards.
Right. Julie Scelfo, founder and executive director of Mothers Against Media Addiction, and Matt O'Neill, co-director of the new documentary Can't Look Away, The Case Against Social Media, which you can stream on Jolt. Thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Fun to be here. Thanks for having me.
A reminder, The Middle is available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. And come into your feed in the next few days, we're going to be doing an extra episode of One Thing Trump Did about the surging number of measles cases in the United States. And we'll be back here next week on The Middle. We'll be talking about what can actually be done to reduce the national debt. As always, you can call in at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, produced by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Bermas-Dawes, John Barth, Annika Deshler, and Brandon Connors. I'm running out of time. Technical Director, Steve Mork. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I will talk to you next week.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. Coldwater Creek's authenticity is embodied in every piece, embracing its confident spirit that carries through to today. Discover Coldwater Creek clothing, designed to fit your life the way you want. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.